Hello, and welcome to Paizo Live, our monthly fireside talk show where we invite some of our creatives to tell us about the wonderful things they're working on. My name is Rue. I use they, he, or z pronouns, and I'm Paizo's marketing and media specialist.
And I am Alex Spidel. My pronouns are he, him, and I am Paizo's organized play coordinator, and today your wonderful and charming co-host for this October's Paizo Live. We're very excited. We have some fun stuff to talk about today. You all will even get to kind of choose what we get to talk about in one of the segments. We love audience participation, so stick around for that. We're very excited. But before I talk to any of them, this is the only time all month I get to talk to my friend Rue. Truly, like getting on stream is the only time we get to do this. So, Rue, what have you been playing lately?
From a tabletop side, recently we opened for the first time Home, which is a game about owning a haunted house. I bought it on Kickstarter for my wedding anniversary last year because the paper anniversary is the first anniversary, so I got us a board game.
Yeah.
And there are different like scenarios and stuff, and we haven't actually played it yet, but I read the rules and the scenario, and I think that counts.
That definitely counts, or else I've played none of the games on my shelf.
Okay, but on the video game side, I'm on my third or fourth replay of Prey, which is a like sci-fi survival horror game where there are things in your space station that can be any object, so don't trust any mug you pick up.
That is different than the video game Stray, which is the cat one, which is
That's
what I thought you were talking about at first. I'm good at video games.
Speaking of games, what have you been playing, Alex?
Well, Rue, I have to confess something to you. I'm a huge nerd. I know this is going to come as a surprise to everyone watching this. Please contain yourselves. One of my nerdiest hobbies, which I have decided to talk about today, is I enjoy reality shows, like competition ones, not like Real Housewives, whatever. I don't care about people fighting. But like, you know, like your Survivors, your Big Brothers, your things like that where people compete. And so one of my yes, they're very good because of just who I am as a person. And so one of my nerdiest hobbies, truly possibly my nerdiest one, is getting together with strangers from the internet to go and play these in like over a weekend, because none of us are pretty enough to get cast on Netflix shows. And so a couple weekends ago, I played and actually won a game of The Mole in Michigan, which was very exciting and super awesome. And I'm a huge nerd, and now you all know that.
That's so cool. And I saw it on social media, and it was cool when I saw it, and it's still cool now. Also, like, not to take up all of our time with this, but how do you get involved with those?
There are Facebook groups for this, and like anyone who wants them, I guess DM me and I will let you know, like, if this is the sort of thing. And like The Mole, for those who are not aware, I guess check it out. It's on Netflix. The Netflix version is okay, but it's basically like a murder mystery or like a puzzle game. It's like one person in the group is like the mole and is sabotaging all the things you're doing, and you have to figure out who it is. And so it's great because it's not like a catty like make alliances, vote people out game. It's a how good are you at solving a mystery, which is just like great. So anyway, check it out on Netflix, and also hit me up for Facebook groups, I guess. Sure. Anyway, enough about my particular nerd things. Let's talk about gods and stuff. Today, scheduled for the show, we're going to be talking to creative director Luis Loza about Pathfinder Lost Omens Divine Mysteries, which comes out in just a couple of months. And we're also going to be talking with John Compton about the Triumph of the Tusk adventure path. I was about to say the first of our Godsrain influenced APs, but that's not true because Curtain Call exists. So I was about to lie to you.
And then I like that you proceeded to continue and tell everyone the lie we're going to
Yeah,
tell.
well, you know, I have to come clean.
But before we talk to either of them, this episode is actually going to start with a pre-recorded segment because I had the luck to speak to Liane Merciel and Mark Moreland earlier this week and record a segment about Godsrain, a Pathfinder novel, which is the first novel we've released in 7 years. So the first segment we'll be popping into is that, and then we will bring in Luis and John for later parts of the show. Is there anything else we want to tell the audience before we start?
Yes, the audience should be reminded that we are collecting questions for our Q&A at the end of the show. So feel free to drop questions in the chat as we chat with people. You can drop questions, I think, for Liane and Mark as well, and maybe we'll corral them to answer them later or something. Maybe Mark will pop into chat. But yeah, please do drop in questions for our Q&A at the end, because boy, are we going to talk about stuff that we won't get to talk about everything. So
yep. And with that, I will take us out and leave you in the wonderful hands of Mark and Liane.
We're back to the past. Just do a little show while we wait. There. Nope.
Welcome to the show, Liane Merciel and Mark Moreland. Liane, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Sure. Okay, so I have been writing tie-in fiction for a while now. I was fortunate enough to get to write some of the Pathfinder tales earlier, Nightglass, Nightblade, Hell Knight, and most recently Godsrain, which I'm very excited to talk about today.
And Mark.
Yeah, I'm Mark Moreland. I am Paizo's Director of Brand Strategy, and I'm sort of the one who's been behind the scenes telling everyone here at Paizo, hey, it sure would be cool if we had fiction again. It's been 7 years since we had our last Pathfinder Tales novel, and when they finally added a novel to the schedule, they said, Mark, make sure that gets done. So that has largely been my responsibility behind the scenes here for the last year and a half, 2 years. And that's how I'm involved in all this.
And I can't stress enough that Mark has done a huge, tremendous amount of work on this project, and I'm extremely indebted to him for putting so much of his creative energy into this.
I appreciate that.
Outline,
but,
basically.
Yeah, but I will note that I did not write 100,000 words. So you're no slouch yourself.
Thank you, but hopefully the readers like it. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
well,
I certainly enjoyed it, and I read it a number of times, and so far everyone who has read it has really enjoyed it, to the extent that sometimes I would pass a chapter to someone and say, hey, can you read this and make sure that this aligns with how the Godsrain works, or how whatever, this spell, is that really the accurate description of how that works? And they would always be like, it was very hard for me to only read the section you sent me. So that's a good
great.
sign, I think.
I am going to ask you all some questions about the book, but first we have a little bit of a tradition. So I'm going to ask you both, what games have you been playing lately? Now, this can be tabletop games, board games, video games, whatever has been sort of piquing your interest lately.
Okay, well, most recently I have been GMing our long-going Office Pathfinder campaign. Very professional, very serious. We do it Tuesdays after work, and it's a campaign that I've been working on that draws actually some elements from Godsrain and other projects that I've been working on. The players consistently give me feedback that it makes them feel terrible. They have nightmares. They cry at night. And most recently, we had a super long boss fight session, came very close to a TPK. It was great. I was really satisfied because in 2 years of this campaign, I have not killed anybody, and they were overdue, but no, they pulled it out. Nobody died, not one. I can't believe it. Very
wow.
Well, it sounds like as a GM, you're doing your job. If they're not having nightmares and they're not worried they're going to die, then you need to amp it up. So that sounds like a success. But if you need a few free rerolls with authorization of Paizo, feel free to throw those in when needed. And then when people are like, "You killed my character," you can say, "No, it was Mark Moreland." And, I'm used to taking heat online. You can send them my way. In terms of what I've been playing, I haven't had the chance to play as much tabletop as I'd like recently, but I just got done playing Euden Chronicles 100 Heroes, which is a JRPG that I backed on Kickstarter maybe 3 years ago, and it just came out this fall, and I finally had a chance to play it. And it's one of those over 100 hours, 120 characters to collect. Like, it scratched all of my brain itches. It was wonderful, and now I'm wondering if I'm going to play it again or if I'm going to try something else. So we'll see.
Those kinds of games intimidate me. Like, I am so bad at games of that size because I get overwhelmed. So I really admire people who can actually do them.
it's old school enough that it doesn't overwhelm me, because I grew up playing the Final Fantasy games on SNES and so those Chrono Trigger, things like that. Like, I can handle the turn-based pixel combat. It's when you start getting into the real-time combat and switching out party members in the middle of combat, and that's too much. But I can do the old school thing. So this one was a very good modern take on some of those nostalgic games from my youth.
Awesome. Now, you kind of started getting into this before I could ask, but my first question is, what is the process for writing a tie-in fiction novel like this look like? Like, nothing too detailed, obviously we don't want to give anything away, but like a look behind the curtain of how did this come to be? How did the idea get turned into a book? That sort of deal.
I think that I'll handle sort of the publishing side of it, and then hand it over to you, Liane, to talk a little bit more about the writing side of it. But from the publishing side, when we had an ongoing line of bi-monthly fiction titles, it was a little bit like we do everything else. We knew that, hey, we're going to publish 6 books this year. What are they going to be? And we would reach out to the authors and say, hey, pitch us some ideas, and we'll take them and we'll slot them in, and then we'll give you time to write them and put them out when they're done. In this situation, because Pathfinder novels have been sort of in limbo on an indefinite hiatus now for like 7 years, we couldn't just go to a bunch of authors and say, hey, pitch us a bunch of ideas. We're going to do 6 novels next year, because they got put on hold for a reason. They weren't really doing what we needed to from a business or marketing standpoint. And so Jim Butler, our president, came to me and Eric Mona, when was it? Last summer, which is probably not long enough ago to have written an entire novel and get it out in November. But here we are. And he said, I want you guys to get a novel on the 2024 schedule. And we said, well, it's got to be the end of 2024 then. And we looked at sort of what we were publishing in 2024. We knew that this War of Immortals event was happening in the latter half of the year. And we thought, what better way to sort of kick that back off than to have a novel that really digs into that multi-product, expansive setting repercussions event. And so that's really all that we had to go on. I knew, having read a lot of the prior fiction, which ones I liked the best. I knew who I had worked with managing the web fiction for our Paizo blog, on what authors I seemed to have a good rapport with. And among the top of both of those lists was Liane. And she also had previously been hired to write all of the interstitial fiction in the War of Immortals book itself. So when we were trying to figure out who was going to write something that tied in with that event, well, she already knew what the Godsrain was. And so it seemed like a natural fit, and luckily she was available, and I said, hey, write me a book. And then she
Well, you gave me a lot more guidance than that, which was super, super helpful, and the project could not have happened otherwise. So from the author's perspective, usually when you write a tie-in novel, like Mark said, you pitch ideas and they'll say, okay, this feels like a good fit for the line. This one doesn't. This story isn't quite big enough. This is too close to what somebody else is working on. But by and large, you have a lot of freedom and flexibility to invent your own characters, come up with your own plot lines. And this project was a little bit different. The parameters were much more structured because it had to fit in with this big game world changing event. And so there were a lot of very specific things that needed to happen. And obviously it had to be built around the iconics, which was both very exciting and a little intimidating. It's a little bit like being invited to write Batman. A lot of other people have ideas about these characters and what they're like and how they talk and how they feel and what matters to them in their quiet moments alone. And so you need to be true to the spirit of that as best you can, but it takes a minute, to get into that vibe and feel like you understand who these people are well enough to do justice to them. So hopefully
Yeah, I mean-
I pulled it off. I don't know. It was tricky, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity.
Yeah, I think that was one of our concerns internally. We were like, we've never done iconic fiction that wasn't like on our blog, that wasn't 1,000 words or less. And so we sort of wondered, like, do these characters have enough star power to really carry a whole novel? And we'd previously seen them in the comic books by Dynamite, written by a number of folks over the years. And the audience really seemed to love being able to get this insight into their characters and sort of build a narrative of their adventuring career from the earliest days fighting goblins to fighting gods in Godsrain. And so this is an opportunity for us to explore those characters in a different medium. Normally, the iconics are only seen in illustrations, in basically as stand-ins for the player characters, because we can't illustrate everyone's character much as we would like to, and much as people tell us about their characters in an effort to get us to illustrate them. We are limited to a few characters per illustration, and so we use the iconics sort of to be like, hey, here's the adventurers fighting the big dragon, or here's the adventurers fighting the demon, or what have you. And since very early, people have said, what's their story? What's their deal? And we don't really have a lot of opportunity necessarily to show those characters and their growth, their motives. And I think that fiction provides a great opportunity for that. And we gave Liane the sort of our internal brand Bible for those characters and said, here's sort of all the existing canon on them. Here's sort of some personality traits. Here's some stuff we'd sure like to see from them in the future. If you can work that in, great. If not, we'll just have to do another novel with them. And I think that it turned out really great. I mean, I've always been a fan of these characters, and so I think I've read the book now 3 times in its entirety. I mean, in various drafts, and every time I was just like, I just want more. I just want more. So hopefully people think the same thing.
Now, there are a handful of iconics in this book because obviously we can't expect all 20 some odd of them to appear meaningfully in one novel. But the cool thing that I've got images of here for us is that when a character's perspective is the main perspective for a chapter or a section, these sigils come up. Is that right, Mark?
One piece of feedback that we got from readers when we did Pathfinder Tales previously was that when point of view would shift from character to character, it wasn't always clear whose viewpoint the chapter was from. And we solved that just by putting the character's name at the top under the chapter title. And while that certainly served its purpose, I am a big fan of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and they did something a lot more like this, where each chapter, whether it's from a specific point of view or about a certain topic, would use a little graphic at the beginning that sort of said, hey, this chapter is about so-and-so, or this one's about the war that's going on over there, or this is about these two characters' relationship, or what have you. And so we had these iconic characters, and I thought, why not just use a symbol for each one of them? And that way people can look at it and when they see the giant sword, they know that chapter is from Amiri's point of view, that the knives are Merciel, the spellbook and cane are Ezrin, and the holy symbol is Kyra. And then we had some chapters that were from other points of view, or had multiple points of view. And for those, we used this one in the middle, which is Gorham's holy symbol after the Godsrain. It shows that broken sword, and the mountain is erupting as a volcano instead of just being a mountain. And so that'll represent those chapters.
And sort of like more of a question for Liane. Was there any of those perspectives that were easier or harder for you to get into in terms of like, oh, I had a really easy time writing Kyra versus Ezrin or something like that?
That's a really interesting question, because I guess there are 2 phases to that. One is, do I feel like I have a grasp of who these characters are at baseline, and then how does that person change over the course of the ordeal that they go through? And each character had a very specific arc. Something precious to them was threatened or changed or straight up taken away in a way that they could no longer recognize or access. And so each of them had their own arc. And so that was both challenging and really, really fun to write, because it was, it scratches that sadistic GM urge of just like, I love this player character so much. What horrible things can I do to them? And how bad is it going to hurt? So that was really fun. And it was also really challenging. One of the things that I have always found interesting and tricky to do is describe how magic feels. So Ezrin goes through some challenges with his magic, and it was interesting trying to find ways to articulate that, because there's nothing you can really compare it to. What does magic feel like? How does it mechanically work, and how is it perceived by the person doing it? And then what does it feel like when that all just goes completely off the rails? So that's something that, I had struggled with previously and got to tackle again in this book. So that was one thing. And then another one was just like, the quieter, more internal challenges faced by all three of the other main iconics, which I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, that plays out in a lot of ways, both small and extremely pyrotechnic.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, one of the goals, I mean, and this is sort of what we have in our internal documentation on the characters, is sort of what motivates them and what seeds have we planted in their character backgrounds that are ready to be given fertilizer and see what they grow into. And I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. When we were first deciding which characters are we going to put in this book, I think we knew that because it was Godsrain and it dealt with the death of a god. Spoiler, although that happened months ago now, everyone knows, right? Gorham's dead. Gorham's dead. If you didn't know, Gorham's dead.
People do still keep commenting on every Facebook post we make, being like, when did you tell us about this? And I'm like,
I mean,
April.
There's people who still get mad when you tell them what Rosebud is in Citizen Kane. So if that can go 70 years without, almost 80 at this point, I don't know what to tell people. So we knew that it was dealing with the death of a god, and we thought, well, then we need to explore that with our most god-focused character, which is Kyra the cleric. And if we have her, we've got to have her wife Merciel, because if we didn't, they would burn down the non-existent office that we have, and so all of our homes would be in jeopardy. And then we thought, okay, what are other ways to sort of explore the mythic rules that are at play here? And we thought a great sort of foil for these two is Ezrin, who's the really analytical atheist. He doesn't believe in any gods. I mean, he knows they exist, but he doesn't worship any of them. He prefers his own intellect to some higher power to grant people spells. And then Amiri, both because she can sort of tank for the group and deal the big damage, but also because it's her god that dies. She likes to yell "Blood for Gorham" in the Kingmaker game, and so people are familiar with her who may not know all the iconics, but they played Kingmaker, and so they know Amiri. But also, what's it like if you're not like a class that needs a god to function, but your god dies? And so we get to explore all four of those characters and sort of how this major event impacts each of them differently, even though they're all part of the same adventuring group and still ultimately going after the same goal.
Speaking of Amiri hitting things really hard, I have this picture here. We got a couple of pieces of art commissioned for this book that Mark did really cool art orders for. And so I just want to take a moment to sort of appreciate this and also talk about, like, with a book like this where there aren't images as often as an RPG book, what's different when you go about ordering the art for them? Because you're not going to do, 70 pieces of spot art, etc.
Sure. in this case, we knew that we needed some type of promotional images other than just the cover of the book. And luckily, you know, our 4 main characters are iconics. There's 2 other iconics who we have revealed make guest appearances, and that's Samo the Animus. No, yes,
Yeah.
all right. I was afraid I got it wrong. All right, Samo the Animist and Nahoa the Exemplar, who debut in the War of Immortals hardcover. They appear, so we have art of them, but we didn't really have art of them doing the things that they do in the book. And normally in an adventure path or other thing, we have an illustration of the iconics fighting the big bad at the end of the book, or fighting a bunch of minions that show up at the beginning of the book. And we didn't have that here. So we ordered this one. This is a encounter that happens early on. I'm actually a little curious if I can ask a question, Liane. What was going through your head when you made this monster? What? It's so gross. It's so gross.
Funny. Partly, it's just the kind of thing that I'm always doing in my own home campaign. Just like the body horror aspect of things is very entertaining to me. And as I was writing the scene in my head, I could imagine the faces that my players would make if I put this on them. So that was part of it. And then another part of it was that at the time I was working on that, I think the remaster was going through its early phases. And so it wasn't totally clear to me which monsters I could and couldn't use. So I decided I would just sidestep that whole issue by inventing something completely new.
Yeah, it's good. And if people really like it, they're going to ask us to stat it up, and I know who I'm going to hire to do that.
Ooh. Do we have someone on staff who's particularly good at weird, creepy creatures?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, one of the challenges narratively in a book like this is that we've really got 4 protagonists, and I think that of the 4 iconics, Kyra is probably the most central character, which was sort of our goal from the beginning, you know, given the nature of the Godsrain event. But we have to establish all these characters and get people who don't already know them up to speed, while also sort of setting the action of the book in motion. And this particular fight scene does a really good job of establishing Amiri, and to a lesser extent Ezrin, but also bringing everyone together and getting the danger factor there, instead of spending a bunch of time talking about all of their backstories.
I have another piece of art here, although I think this is from later in the book, so we'll have to be a little bit more careful with our spoilers of it.
Yeah.
But here's the other half page that I've got for us. This one's really pretty. In juxtaposition to the gross creature that was in the other one, this one's just very pretty.
Yeah. This comes from the chapter. It's chapter 9, which is just entitled Godsrain. And it provides, I don't even know, we probably should have counted before the stream, but I'd say probably 15 to 20 different points of view of characters all across the multiverse, watching this event happen and sort of seeing the aftermath. Because we really wanted to set the stage of like, hey, this is happening everywhere and everyone is impacted by it. And yeah, I'm curious, Liane, what was it like writing that one chapter that was so different than the rest of the book, where you're following these 4 characters and their internal monologue?
It was really fun to do something that kaleidoscopic. The difficulty of it was just trying to make each little scene kind of, I guess, narratively interesting, because they're so brief and they have to illustrate this huge event from so many different points of view. And also, I guess, part of what was going through the back of my mind as I was writing this was trying to establish adventure hooks so that people reading this would be like, oh, there's a cool new monster that I could, you know, throw in as a random encounter somewhere. Or I wonder how that turns out. Maybe my players will find some relics of that encounter later on as they're wandering through this area. So that was also a part of it.
Yeah, that was fun for me, because the guidance that I gave you was just tell some crazy stories about people getting god powers or fighting things that suddenly have god powers. And boy, that didn't disappoint. But while I knew the plot of the whole book before I really dug in to read it my first time, I didn't know what to expect with this chapter, and it was a lot of fun. And we've actually provided this chapter as a preview there's 2 ebooks that are available to promote Godsrain. The first of those is already out. That's the Godsrain Prophecies, which is available on Paizo.com, Kindle Store, wherever you buy your ebooks. And that's got this preview chapter in it at the end. Cool. So we'll have to make sure that people read that to get an idea of sort of what's happening. And then that illustration, as you saw, was sort of the Iconics witnessing that at the very end of the chapter. And boy, it sure looks like something is coming from the sky and hitting Ezran, doesn't it? I don't know if it's necessarily a raindrop or God spark, but sure is something.
Nothing could possibly come from this.
No,
it's just inspiration. We just see him being inspired by the sight.
He's just like, hey, look, the death of a god. I don't like the gods. That's great.
More room for me, a wizard.
Yeah. I think, and Liane, you mentioned that sort of that chapter, and I think in general the fiction serves to provide people inspiration for their own games. And the antagonists in that chapter of like the crazy fish that just wants to eat things now, or the just wait till you read it, Rue.
I'm so excited.
That's good. If you weren't afraid of to get in the water before, you will be now. There's a lot of inspiration there, but even the 2 main antagonists of the book, I think, are really inspiring, and I hope we can do more with them in the future. Do you want to talk a little bit about how these characters came to be? I mean, obviously we don't want to give too much away, but this was sort of an area where I know we gave you a little bit more leeway to just sort of come up with your own stuff. We knew sort of what we want, big picture, who we wanted the villains of the book to be, but these are really your creations here. So I'm
trying to think how much I can say without spoileries. Let me think. So it was clear from the briefing what the characters actually needed to be and where they needed to get their powers from and what their whole backstory was. So there were just layers and layers of complexity behind the scenes. I'm not sure how much of that actually made it out into the finished manuscript because there was a lot going on with both of those characters. Yeah. And in some ways, I tried to use them to bring out the contrasts in each other by making them foils to one another. So one is really wild and uncontrolled, and
it's the guy with the very polished armor, right? He's the one that's
and not a person for whom I have never experienced so strong gender envy as whatever the person on the right has happening.
I think that's just supposed to be a ball of destructive energy loosely confined in rags. So
yeah,
if that's it, go for it.
Yes.
Yeah. I was really happy with both of them, and I think that they, we didn't give you an easy task of saying there need to be these 2 villains instead of just giving you one. But I think that they like you say do work really well off each other. And I know which of the 2 I think is creepier or a bigger threat, but I will be interested to see sort of what the fans say afterwards, whether they are more on Team Itagwin or Team Kuravak.
Ooh. I think a lot of it just comes down to, do you or don't you buy into the delusion that you can throw a halter on a hurricane and steer it where you want it to go?
Yeah. That's true. That's a good analogy.
I don't want to keep you all too much longer, but I did want to ask, this book is available, will be available as a hardcover and a PDF. But if I recall correctly, we're also having an audiobook made. Yes.
Yeah, so as with all of our books, we've got the the physical print version and the digital version. That'll be both PDF and EPUB for people who use non-PDF e-readers. And those will be available to buy just about anywhere you can get those. Then we're also going to do an audiobook. All but two of our past Pathfinder Tales books have audiobooks. A lot of those are exclusive to Audible, who had a license to produce those exclusively. This one we're producing ourselves, and that will be out not day and date. We had originally wanted them all to come out at the same time. With the audiobook, we felt that it was important to have a narrator who reflected the diversity of the characters. And as I said before, Kyra is really the sort of, she's the, I wouldn't say leader of the party, but she's the central character in this, even though there is the full adventuring party. And so I always sort of wanted to have a narrator who I was sure could authentically play Kyra. And so we asked the producer who was doing this to try and find us a narrator who was of Middle Eastern descent, or lived in the Middle East. I guess everything's remote now, so we didn't even need them to be in the US to record. And they did find someone, and I from the audition that's still in production now, I think it's going to be a really good performance, but it did delay us a little bit in that, because they couldn't just go out and find any voice actor. It was a little bit narrower selection pool, but I think ultimately people are going to be really happy with that. And so the 2 extra weeks, maybe 2 or 3, will be worth the wait.
Well, I will have us leave with one final thing, which is generally we ask folks for a spoiler. So I know this has kind of all been a bunch of little spoilers about the novel, but can you give me something juicy?
I can't because of NDAs, so I'm going to let Mark do that.
Yeah, I guess there's a few big things, but not all of them are telegraphed by the novel. And so I worry that if I were to say them, as much as I think they would make the hype train leave the station, they might ruin the experience for some folks. So you are going to have to read the book to get all of them. But I will say that while we were talking a little bit before about the point of view, thank you. There's our beautiful cover. I mean, beautiful is probably the wrong word to use with Varric.
I think it's beautiful. That's my baby.
I know. Yeah. And you got to write that character, if character is the right word. You got to write that abomination in 2 different books, both Godsrain and in the War of Immortals hardcover as well too. I think the spoiler that I will give is that while the bulk of the book is from the point of view of the 4 main iconics, we have one chapter that is from the point of view of one of Pathfinder's most famous and beloved gods. And I will spoil that it's not Gorham. Unfortunately, Gorham was indisposed at the time that chapter of the book takes place. And so I think it's probably my favorite chapter of the book, just from the joy of reading it. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't make me tear up a little bit, a few of the lines in there. So I think that fans of our gods are really going to love the opportunity to read that chapter and to sort of get a glimpse of what this whole Godsrain is like from the point of view of one of the deities who could be next.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for taking some time out of your days to record this with me. Here is the space where if you would like to tell folks where they can find you or how they can support you, you handles, etc., that sort of thing.
Just buy the book. Tell Paizo you love them. That's all I need.
Yeah, I certainly can't not echo that. Buy the book. But if you do want to follow me, I'm not as active on social media as I used to be, but I am at Yoda, the number 8, my head, on just about every social media platform. That's where you can find me on Twitter, which I don't use anymore, but Blue Sky and what's the other one? Threads. I don't even know anymore. I'm such an old. I don't even do social media anymore, lest I go into full boomer mode and people think I'm AI. So that's where you can follow me. But always on the Paizo forums are probably the best way to get a hold of me. Or if you post something to Reddit that I like, I might pop in there and say interesting as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun. Bye.
Bye.
At the dawn of time, the gods united in a desperate battle to save the universe when the rough beast Rovagug aspired to devour planet after planet. In the end, he was not destroyed, only imprisoned in the heart of the planet Galarian. Since then, gods have risen and fallen, but all agree that the rough beast must never escape. Now, Gorum, god of war, has been slain, and the remains of his divine body rain down upon the face of the world. Where his blood and shattered armor land, mythic power takes root and war spreads. For Kira, Merciel, Ezrin, and Amiri, 4 veteran adventurers seeking a lost relic of the sun god Sarenrae and answers to an unexpected assassination attempt, this cataclysm will set them on a desperate task, not only to understand and grapple with their newfound mythic powers, but to prevent the escape of the rough beast himself. Mysterious and sinister forces plot to ensure Rovagug's escape, and the heroes will have no easy time stopping their evil plans. With their burgeoning mythic power, the gift of one of Galarian's surviving deities, and the aid of newfound allies, will 4 mortals be able to stand before a god? Embark upon an epic tale of high adventure in the world of the best-selling Pathfinder role-playing game in Godsrain by Liane Merciel, coming soon to a bookseller near you. Find out more on Paizo.com or with the Prelude electronic books, The Godsrain Prophecies and Before the Godsrain. The fate of the world depends on it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Paizo Live, the live version. We are back live. We hope you enjoyed that chat with Liane and Mark. That was honestly really great. But we are back live here with you, and I am joined by Luis Loza, who I was going to do an intro for, but he's a big boy, and he could introduce himself. Luis, tell the people who you are.
Yeah, like you said, I'm Luis Loza. I am creative director for the rules and lore side of things on Pathfinder. Here to talk more divine stuff. What a blessed day we have today.
It's all gods all the time around here these days, isn't it? Yes, we are here to talk Pathfinder Lost Omens Divine Mysteries, which releases not this month, but next month, right? In November?
Yes, correct.
Okay, fantastic. So, yes, sort of well, you can sort of talk about the book, but we're gonna do something a little bit different in this segment. But before I tell you what we're doing differently, I forgot to ask you, Luis, what have you been playing lately?
I haven't been playing Pathfinder. I wrapped up a campaign a few weeks ago.
Oh, that's exciting.
I had converted the Ironfang Invasion Adventure Path to 2nd edition, and my group finished that, and now we're on a break. We've actually had this happen before. Between campaigns, we take breaks and try out other games. So this time we're trying out Cubicle 7's Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory game, which is an interesting game so far. I like it. It's fun. It's just I don't know that game or the world and the setting and the lore very well. So it's very interesting to run into things that are other friends of mine know very well. It's like, oh, this is what it must be like for them on that side. I know everything, and they're just like, I have a dwarf. It's like, let me tell you everything about High Helm. Let me tell you about every clan. And yeah, so they know all about that stuff, and it's really fun. So I've been playing that, and I also started this little indie game called Baldur's Gate 3, For the first
Interesting.
time.
I've heard a review or two of that.
We'll
Yeah.
see. It's interesting so far. We'll see if I have any fun. Yeah, it's been a great time.
Well, good. Yeah, I think it's important to get out and experience other stuff, and breaks are good. I just literally last night brought my Strike the Thousands campaign back after a summer break where I said I don't have time to run for you people for a couple months of con season.
You just finished up my adventure, didn't you?
Yeah, we just finished yes, Secrets of the Temple City. Is that what that book is called?
Yeah.
I don't know, it was months ago. Yes, we did. They had a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun with the end of it.
I'm glad.
Yes. So yes, we're here to talk Divine Mysteries. We've talked a lot about Divine Mysteries so far. Look at that stunning cover.
So
Isn't she beautiful? It's so good. It's so good. But we're going to do something a little bit different today, do some audience interaction. So pay attention to the window. Interesting things are going to happen. So we are going to let the audience vote in a Twitch poll on what we make you talk about, because we figured let the people kind of decide. So you've brought along some stuff here. Do you want to talk about what's on this slide that the people can vote on?
Yes, absolutely. We have a lot of new gods or gods featured for the first time. There's some that we've mentioned in the past, but never really gave kind of any in-depth look at. So I figured this is a good time to highlight some of these new gods. And I have brought here the religious symbols for various gods. We're going to do a couple batches of these, a couple of different votes. And I figured based on vibes, based on names, based on what you're seeing, people will vote and we'll decide what god we're going to look at. And I'll tell you a little bit about that god and hopefully get you excited about the book and maybe drop some tidbits along the way while we're waiting for these votes to wrap up. So
excellent. Yeah, it looks like the poll has started here. So I don't know if you want to say anything about these symbols or not. But, people can vote now.
There they are. The names here that you're seeing are the names of these deities, but you won't get that information each vote. But in this case, we have 4 different gods. All of these are brand new, showing up for the first time in Divine Mysteries. And I don't know, maybe you're into tattered cloaks. Maybe you're into...
So far, the people seem to be.
Hot springs. Maybe you're into... cool little shields. I don't know. It's up to you, but we're gonna see. We don't have.
Is that a flower or an eyeball on Astrogene's symbol?
It's in the shape of an eyeball. It's a bunch of plants and stuff.
Wait! I just realized the whole thing is the shape of an eye. Whoa! Yes. Art design, incredible.
Yeah. So some religious symbols are a lot easier for their followers to draw than others.
Yeah, it's like the statement in vexillology. You should make sure a child can draw your flag. And I just used the word vexillology on the stream. Love that for me. So we have results from the poll in with 42% of the vote. Let's talk about Aleph.
There's a typo there. Excuse me. It's A-L-E-T-H. Aleph.
Oh, that's on us.
That's all right. So Aleph, this is one of the new gods, like I mentioned. This was written by Mark Seifter. And he wrote a god about community, hospitality, mystery, and night. When I put this outline together, I was intentionally making slots for brand new gods. And I said, darkness shows up a lot as a theme among gods, but generally those gods are malevolent, wicked people. Let's have a nice god of darkness. Mark took on that task and he gave us Aleph, who is a very nice lady indeed. She is all about the darkness isn't inherently an evil thing, right?
Of course.
We have people doing things under cover of darkness that could be considered good. We have people that work during the dark, right? Guards that are doing night watch. They would maybe pray to Aleph for protection and stuff. So Aleph is all about anyone that's good that makes use of darkness. And in particular, her faith has two main goals: to protect communities at night or protect people in dark places, and also to explore the mysteries hidden within darkness. Once you reveal and clear away darkness, you might find wonderful things, and Aleph is all about that. And a lot of her worshippers end up being detectives or investigators, combining those two ideas together. So she is someone who can allow for holy sanctification. Take that as you will. Very nice lady. Let's see, what other things? Her sacred animal is the brown bat. So yeah, that's kind of the things she has, and a lot of, unsurprisingly, her spells that she has available for you as a cleric or worshiper are shadow themed and stuff like that. So that is one of these new gods. The other three, I guess you have to buy the book and find out who they were.
I guess so, or you can leave comments in the chat and ask us about them. So we've got our next set of symbols here, and it looks like we've got sort of areas of concern rather than names on this one.
Exactly. So yes, we have a crucible, a sword on an anvil, and what looks like a talon clutching a bullet for these different symbols. If any of those pique your interest, now's the time to vote on them.
Yeah. The poll has opened. The voting has begun. While they're voting, I'm just kind of interested, and maybe you're going to talk about this later. So sorry if I'm preempting things. When you were looking at divine mysteries, you said that like Aelith came out of wanting a god of darkness that was like a good god, not an evil god. How much of the book was that versus like we have these specific gods we want to talk about, or like were there even authors that you just kind of gave blank pages that you were like, pitch us a god, maybe we'll like it?
There wasn't any spot that was specifically give me any god, but there was a lot of just like darkness god that is good is a very broad thing, and I didn't specifically have any requirements of like, oh, she should be focused on this or grant this domain or anything like that. So there was a number of these. So two of these, in fact, were of that kind of variety. Hey, I gave you a 1 or 2 word subject. Have fun with it, right? And sometimes I might have expressed a bit more specific details. There were a few gods that I wanted to make sure filled specific niches, and everyone likes this talon. It seems
yeah, 55% for the talon. That's an actual majority between the
wow.
three. So let's talk about this individual. I don't know the results of these, by the way, so I'm learning things as you all are as well.
Let's talk about Kaldamash, written by let me see here, Luis Loza.
Whoa! Do you know him?
I know that guy. I met him once at a party. Kaldamash is one of our Arcadian deities. We haven't had too many show up so far in the past. Kazutal is one right next to Kaldamash in this book. Hey, wouldn't you know it? But also probably the only main Arcadian god that's shown up in 2nd edition so far. But I wanted to include a god of for guns, right? Just, hey, I'm a gunslinger. Who do I worship? You could worship a god of combat or something. Had they not died? But Kaldamash is a bit more fitting. And I actually seeded the idea of Kaldamash some time ago in Treasure Vault. There is a unique gun called Kaldamash's Lament.
I thought I'd heard the name before.
that hints at like the idea of like, oh, there's this figure who developed this code of honor and ethics to using guns called the Star Code. And that's what he's all about. He's the god of, like it said, prey, firearms, and honorable combat. He is the god of drifting gunslingers who travel the area, protect local villages, maybe take on the role of a sheriff for a little bit. If you want to have a duel, maybe a cleric of Kaldamash will set up the guidelines and all that stuff. And he's also got kind of a tragic story about developing these magical star guns over in Arcadia way back in the day. And early on, after this development, tragedy strikes, someone gets hurt. And he's like, hey, these things are not toys. Let's figure out a way to handle these and suggest to people how to take care of them, make use of them. So his drifting faith has drifted over into the inner sea, wouldn't you know it? How did that happen? I don't know. Who would have decided to bring him over? And now the Keeper of the Code is a little more prominent enough to feature in this book, and also scratch that itch of, I'm a gunslinger, who do I worship? There you go. You have Kaldamash. And the other two deities that you saw in the or the other two holy symbols represent deities that are also combat focused, which I wanted to bring about a couple more combat focused deities in the wake of Gorham's death. They wouldn't exactly fill the role that Gorham did, but that's kind of the point is, hey, Gorham's worshippers get scattered. Who do they go to next? Maybe if you were a gunslinger worshiper of Gorham, you go to Kaldamash. If you were one of these other worshippers, you might go to one of these other deities.
I love that particular thinking because like gunslingers are not a character that I think most people probably associate with like deities and gods and things like that, but it would absolutely make sense that there would be faithful gunslingers or gunslingers that also follow deities. And so I think it's really cool that you kind of gave them that specific niche. So, in Lost Omens Divine Mysteries, Kaldamash is this brand new deity. Am I gonna have everything that I need to like make a cleric of Kaldamash or a champion of Kaldamash if I want to do that?
Yes, it of course has your edicts, your anathema, your cleric spells, divine font, all the stuff. Every deity featured here, and pretty much every god in 2E that we've had will be remastered by the time this book is out to let everyone play kind of whatever you need, including having your sanctification, all that stuff. It's also including a couple of extra little tidbits, like knowing that Kaldamash's sacred colors are gray and red.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need that to worship him mechanically in the game, but it's kind of nice to be like, oh, what would my character be wearing? They might be wearing these colors, or might have a pet falcon.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the sort of great world building details that help players build characters, of course, but I think also helps GMs kind of flesh out the world of like, oh, we're gonna go to a Temple of Kaldamash. I wonder what it looks like. It'll give you a little bit, right? Of like, well, it's probably the banners probably look a lot like this. All right, we've got another. Oh boy, we've got some images.
This one
here.
I didn't want to include any information on. I just said this is all vibes. We're in October. Someone is gonna win here, but like all vibes, spooky stuff. Let's see what people decide for this.
Yeah, we've got Bloody Book Skulls, Moon Skull, and Blood Bat, according to the poll, and this sure is a vibe.
Yes, very, very vibe. Which is unfortunate for you, Alex. I've learned that you're not very much into spooky stuff.
I am not. I'm a big wimp. I can't see anything scary. I appreciate the spooky aesthetic. This is great, but I don't think I'm going to make characters that follow any of these deities. But I guess we'll find out shortly here.
Yes, we will. So 2 of these are technically gods that existed in the past, and 1 is brand new. We'll see what gets picked, but I think they're all great, which is why I brought them along today to see what people
We have a
do.
tight race on this one as the poll closes out. I will wait to make a determination just in case we get some mail-in ballots here at the end.
I see.
But Moon Skull has won. I hope that's just the deity's name. It's just Moon Skull.
Yeah, his name is Moon Skull Jones.
Fantastic.
He
also
is,
a gunslinger deity.
He's a breakdancing god. No, that's not true. That is true.
No, that's canon now.
We probably need a god of breakdancing. We'll see.
Mercy, put that down for the April Fool's.
I know a guy or two that can maybe add this to the game. Anyway, let's actually look at
the actual Moon Skull deity.
This is going to be Apuk, who is the entry was written by Jaime Reyes Mondragon, who this is derived originally from kind of the Mayan deity Apuk, and he is the god of, basically he rules Xibalba, which is a plane of very bad spooky stuff. He's known as the Destroyer. He's a god of death, destruction, and the moon. And the realm of Xibalba is a home to Sakil's things of nightmarish, just it's all bad, right?
Oh, it's all bad. It's all bad there.
Yeah,
it's all bad.
It's all bad. And he's all about manifesting people's fears, right? He preys on fears, but he isn't just like a jump scare, haha, you got scared and now I get stronger. He's all about causing people to kind of destroy their lives due to their fears, right? They will become people who push others away, afraid that, I don't trust you anymore, or that kind of stuff. That's
so like a creeping dread, or
yes, dread is very good.
Spooky.
A good way to describe what Puk's all about. And then by the time that you have died and have succumbed to all this fear and all that stuff because of the nature of who you were and how you acted as a person, when you get judged, turns out then Farazan's like, well, your soul is very full of fear and dread and all that stuff. So let's send you to Xibalba, where you can enjoy your afterlife. It turns out maybe you won't enjoy it. But yes, he is definitely an unholy deity. You must choose unholy if you worship him. And he is into all things bad. His domains include darkness, death, destruction, and the moon. But also his alternate domains include pain and secrecy and sorrow and trickery. Not very nice stuff. So yeah.
This guy seems great.
Yeah, he is another Arcadian, prominently featured in Arcadia. But hey, wouldn't you know it, Sakyos show up kind of anywhere, and because he is kind of the ruler of the realm where Sakyos reside, he can kind of manifest his fears or his torment and terror kind of anywhere. So a perfect villainous deity, or if you're running an evil campaign, a perfect deity for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Chat has immediately named him Spooky, which is what I'm going to call him now.
Yes,
So
that is fair enough. But considering how spooky it is, I figured we should close out on something a little nicer.
Okay.
We'll do one last vote here. And this time we're looking at 3 deities whose name we're giving here, who are all from Vudra originally. So these 3 deities are actually all wrapped up in their own story. They're all tied together, which you'll learn about here in a little bit. But
Luis, while folks are voting on this, I will admit to not being as familiar with every nation of Galarian as I should be. Can you tell people a little about what the nation of Vudra is all about?
Yeah, Vudra draws a lot of inspiration from Southeast Asia, specifically from India, the greater subcontinent area. And if you know anything about Jalmaray in the Impossible Lands region, Jalmaray is just kind of a small window into what the rest of Vudra looks like. So there's a lot of it's hard to say what Vudra is all about because we haven't talked too much about Vudra, unfortunately, so we don't have like as full of details. But know that it draws upon those inspirations. There's they are in the religious aspect known to have 1,000 gods, so people claim, and some of these gods are as minor as like, hey, I'm the god of this particular small river, right? And some of them are broader, more powerful gods.
It's good to take on, I think, domains that you can like really handle. Taking on like everyone's nightmares seems like a lot of work, but like one forest, I feel like you can handle that. Yeah. And it looks like the votes have come in 38% for Mbarl, if that is how I pronounce it.
Yes. All right. So
friendly.
He is a nice guy, just a friendly dude. I'm not joking. It's just genuinely a nice guy. This is Mbarl, known as the Flooded Heart. He is the god of heartache, passive resistance, and perseverance. He was written by Aaron Roberts, who you might know as the author of the Godsrain Prophecies.
Yes.
And he is representing a couple of different things. One, if for those in the know, we have a variety of oceans in the setting. One is the Mbarl Ocean, and the other is the Obari Ocean. Hey, that's 2 of those guys that we just mentioned. And Mbarl is representative of the ocean that's a bit more calmer. The Mbarl Ocean is a little easier, a little less rough. But in the past, the story is Mbarl and Obari both fell in love with Vudravati, that 3rd deity, and they were both vying for her heart. The brothers came to start fighting, and she decided, enough is enough. I don't want to see you fight. I love you both. Laid down between 2 of them and became the continent, or the subcontinent of Vudra. And now the oceans are split up in Mbarl and Obari, and all 3 of them are deities now. But Mbarl is someone who is there for people who have lost love. He has that heartache in his past, and he's there to support people who have dealt with that. But he's also there to oppose those who are unjust. He's there to rise up in resistance. The ocean may be calm, but it's no less powerful, right?
Absolutely.
And he helps people deal with change and stuff like that. A very nice guy, all about duty and sorrow and vigil and water, wouldn't you know it? But you'll learn about the kind of intertwined story of all 3 deities once you go to pick up Divine Mysteries, which, hey, like you said, is coming out next month, right in time for your holiday shopping.
Absolutely. Make a wonderful gift wrapped under whatever planting you do at this time of year. I do also want to shout out, you talked about Vudra being mentioned a little bit, I think, in Lost Omens Impossible Lands and just kind of that whole sub-region. Lost Omens Impossible Lands, I believe, is available right now in our Humble Bundle, our Bundle of the Dead, I think it is. It's got some Impossible Lands and some Book of the Dead stuff in there. So if you're interested, check it out, and proceeds go to a good cause in addition to getting you a PDF, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great book. It's beautiful.
And of course, like you said, we've talked a lot about Divine Mysteries. There's look at that, Impossible Lands. It's an enormous book. So much in there.
So much in here. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, just
and
like
Divine Mysteries is about this size too.
328 pages of divine goodness in Divine Mysteries. Yeah, so lots of fun stuff. For those not in the know, if this is your first time hearing about Divine Mysteries, hey, welcome, but also very surprising because I feel like I've talked about this so much over the past year. You'll learn about
much good stuff in this.
Core deities, you'll get player options, you'll get looks at other groups of deities like the Imperial Lords, the Great Old Ones, and stuff like that. Anything that's kind of shown up in the past, we tried to cram in here somehow. I don't know if it even all fit. We'll see. But lots of divine stuff, and of course, as you can see in my background, our nice little narrator Yavali, who traveled the world to teach you or to write down all the fun stuff you learn about in Divine Mysteries.
Yes, very, very exciting. So yeah, that is available in just a few weeks. You can pre-order it now. You can subscribe now to Lost Omens, and it'll be the very first thing that you will get from us. I think we are just about ready to go chat about some orcs. But before we do, Luis, I should ask if, I know you've talked quite a lot about what's in this book. Do you perhaps have one more Paizo Live spoiler for us to share?
Boy, do I. So in the past, I've been very coy about some stuff, and I decided, hey, let me give you exact details from this book about one very specific aspect. One of the player options coming in this book is a new class archetype for the cleric, known as the Battle Harbinger, excuse me. Mortal Herald is a different thing. A lot of words get mixed up. The Battle Harbinger is a class archetype for clerics. They give up some spell casting in exchange for more martial prowess, and also they swap out their divine font. They don't get heal or harm a bunch of times for free. They get what has been referred to as battle auras, and battle auras encompass a couple of different spells specifically. So your font becomes this new battle aura font kind of thing, and you can just use them to do whatever. But two of these spells are Bless and Bane, and the other two are these new spells that are showing up in this book, in this book here: Benediction, Malediction. Bless and Bane, they make an aura and they give you a bonus to hit or a penalty to hit for your enemies. Benediction are kind of the counterparts to these. They give you bonus to AC or reduce enemy AC as well. So if you can get your Bless going and Bane and like Malediction going, that's a lot going on as well. So you can stack a bunch of auras and use these castings to really kind of buff up your party, buff yourself up, make your enemies tougher. And then as you grow in power, you even get additional feats that really play around with your battle auras to do real cool stuff. So there's a feat that says, hey, when you hit someone, you can automatically sustain one of your battle auras, and it'll have any effect. So like your aura might grow larger. And then even later on at higher levels, if you happen to crit and you sustain an aura, then you also increase the values on it. So instead of getting a +1 bonus to hit from Bless, you'll now get a +2 bonus, or you'll reduce someone's AC by 2, or you manage to crit a bunch of times, you can really get real powerful real quick. And it kind of becomes a snowball effect that we hope people have a lot of fun with. People wanted to get into the midst of combat and really go nuts, and we hope that these battle auras allow them to do that.
Well, this is the worst possible spoiler you could have brought me, because now I have new character concepts in my head, and I already had enough. I didn't need more. How dare you?
That's the job.
It truly is the job, isn't it? All right. Well, we will go ahead and finish up here, but Luis will be back in just a little bit for our Q&A segment at the end of the show. So if you have any questions for Luis that he didn't answer, maybe if you want any sneaky information about any of the other gods that we cruelly did not tell you about, drop your questions in chat, and we will ask him at the end of the show. But for now, I think we will bid you farewell, take you to another commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk Triumph of the Tusk.
Welcome, friends, to the Greenwood Gala, where all the people of the forest, even talking animals like me, come together to celebrate everything wonderful about nature. We get to know each other, have fun, and respectfully share ideas. Here in the Verdurin Forest, the Treaty of the Wildwood protects nature. It lets our neighbors harvest a few trees, conserve the rest, and all in all keeps everyone peaceful, warm, and happy. This is a pleasant place, full of wonder, where everyone gets along. Wait, what's that? Well, I mean, the treaty keeps the arboreals happy, so they would never... Oh, nope, they look angry. Surely the Fae of the forest understand that... Oh, this isn't good. I can't remember the last time that... Oh no! Everyone needs to hold up for a minute. We can talk this through. Wait, no, not like that. Okay, the Verdurin Forest isn't always fun and cheery, but this is getting out of control. Get some negotiators. Meet with the lumberjacks and druids. Smile a bunch. No, this is not how we're supposed to negotiate. This shouldn't be happening. We're supposed to be gathering, sharing, having fun. And now, everyone's tearing apart the treaty. Maybe we need some new faces. Some fresh ideas. Someone who's gonna make things right. Hey, maybe some Wardens of Wildwood.
Shoot for the stars! The Starfinder 2nd Edition play test brings Starfinder into a bright future of cross-game compatibility and intergalactic intrigue. The Starfinder 2nd Edition play test rulebook gives players and GMs a wealth of science fantasy character options, spells, feats, equipment, and more. The playtest rulebook outlines 10 ancestries and, of course, adorable Skittermanders. Choose from 6 classic, the charismatic envoy, a magical mystic, the stealthy operative, the heavy-hitting soldier, and the cosmic-powered Solarian, and the paradoxical Witch Warper. Launch into the play test with the first playtest adventure, A Cosmic Birthday. An adventure for first-level characters. A Cosmic Birthday places characters at the center of a world-changing event in the Starfinder universe. Witness the birth of a new god, battle cosmic horrors in space, and make it back to the party in time. Excited for higher-level play? Dive into the center of blossoming intergalactic conflict in Empires Devoured. Empires Devoured is an adventure for 10th level characters. Characters find themselves on Atuity, witnessing a historic peace talk between Aslanti, Star Empire, and the Veskarium. However, that brokered peace is shattered by a surprise attack and negotiations turn into interstellar war. Fighting against rogue Aslanti operatives, saboteurs, and devourer cultists, the characters must stop the conflict from destroying Atuity and the entire Adalawe star system. Launch into the science fantasy campaign of your dreams with the Starfinder 2nd Edition play test.
Hello, John. Oh, my mic isn't on. Hello, John. And welcome to our third segment of Paizo Live. I've said your name, but why don't you tell us who you are?
Hi, I'm John Compton. I'm one of our lead developers. I work primarily on the Pathfinder Adventure Path line.
Awesome. And one of our other developers also worked on this adventure path, Michelle Kim, but she couldn't be with us today. But I just wanted to give her a shout out for also working alongside of you on this project.
Yeah, Michelle joined us about a year ago, and she's been working on Adventure Path. She's been backstopping a lot of the projects that I had kind of gotten in gear by the time that she was hired. And she's just starting to put together her own Adventure Path outlines and pitches. So probably in another year's time, we're going to be able to see a lot of the things which were, oh, hey, she got to build this largely from the ground up, sorts of things. But she was invaluable in getting Triumph of the Tusk all assembled, developed, and put together.
Now, before I ask you about Triumph and the Tusk, I do have to ask, what have you been playing lately?
I've primarily been playing a Season of Ghosts campaign. Occasionally, we do like a one-shot of Call of Cthulhu, and that largely covers it right now. There's a little bit of play testing here and there for some of the newer subsystems that are either coming out or to be revealed. But that's always a good fun time as well.
Awesome. Well, we are here today to talk about Triumph of the Tusk, which is a 3-part adventure path that starts this month. Yes, time is fake. I think it's this month. But for folks who haven't seen or heard of Triumph of the Tusk before, could you give us kind of a general overview of what this campaign is about?
Yeah, so this is a Belkzen-centered campaign. So that is our orc homeland, so to speak. Lots of orc material that you're going to be exploring, a lot of orc-like activities that you're going to be doing. But this is, even though it is an orc-catered adventure path, it is not one where you have to play an orc. Not by any means. In fact, it's almost better if you have either a mixed group or even no orcs at all. Because the way that it's set up is that Ardax the Whitehair, kind of a de facto leader of Belkzen, there's no true united Belkzen, which is one of the issues that the AP explores, is trying to open up the region to the wider world. For thousands of years, people have looked at Belkzen and been like, oh yeah, that's the place where orcs live, and orcs are always, I don't know, terrible and tusky and savage, and they, burn down our stuff and kill our people. Yeah, there's Ardax right there. And he's trying to change that narrative some. So he's holding a thing called the Torrent Moot, which is going to be like this grand safari tour of Belkzen during a time called the Flood Truce, which is when everything greens up, all of the aurochs sort of migrate in. It's time of plenty. Orcs generally don't punch each other during that time. And so he's inviting in a whole bunch of representatives from anywhere. Like, is it an organization? Is it a nation? Is it somebody who sounds important? Cool, send them an invite. And by and large, the world has received these invites and said, that's nice, Ardax, but there are thousands of years of precedent that say that you're going to, actually, we don't even know. We're just going to assume, kill, barbecue, and eat our representatives. So why don't we send you some people who are competent but expendable, like third-level PCs? So you are people who largely represent bigger interests, but you're also there with a fair amount of kind of implicit authority. You're kind of there to test the waters and see if this Ardax fellow can walk the walk, so to speak. And over the course of things, you're going to start off being very coddled. You are guests. Ardax wants to make the best impression ever possible. But of course, it's an adventure path. So things are going to go wrong at some point, and you're going to find yourself on the back foot for a while. You're going to find yourself on the run for a while, but you're going to regain your agency over the course of the first volume, and you're going to emerge from it being a much more proactive force who will be working with Belkzen and with Ardax from then on.
That's super cool. I'm like legitimately very excited for everything I've seen thus far about this this campaign, because also I am someone who just really loves diving into regions that I don't know very much about, and personally I don't know very much about Belkzen, so I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of prepping to get ready to dive into things like that, I hear the player's guide for this might be coming out soon.
Yep, it should be coming out any day now. I've not looked at the exact schedule, but check the website. Yeah, so it's going to provide a lot of the standard player's guide sort of content. So, like, hey, what classes and ancestries and whatnot are recommended? It's going to provide you some general overview of like the kinds of skills and feats that are generally going to be useful for you. Even a little sidebar talking about, hey, what's equipment access like? And there's a little reminder of like, hey, if you want to like make anything with the orc trait common, go nuts. You're going to find plenty of that stuff during the adventure anyway. But the biggest portion of kind of atypical content in there is something that we did a little bit of with Sky King's Tomb as well, which was a more dwarf-centric adventure path. And in this case, Divine Mysteries has a great overview of the Orc Pantheon, particularly after the War of Immortals developments. And so we provide copies of all of the Orc deities or Orc Pantheon stats. So if you want to come in and have a cleric of one of those from the get-go, then that information is available to the players and ready to And if you aren't playing such a character, then it'll give you a little bit more of a taste of what Belkson's religious landscape looks like.
That's so cool. And again, I think one time Luis was talking about the way that orcs ascend into godhood, and so I'm very excited to read about all of the new orc gods.
Yeah, and that's one of the cultural nuances of Belkson, and that's one of the other things that the player's guide and the adventure path as a whole really try to accomplish, is that we know that there are decades and decades of orc stereotypes that RPGs and fantasy have embraced or even fought against. And Paizo's much more on the fight against stance right now. And so going into an adventure path like this, there's kind of a question of like, how are we presenting orcs? What are we keeping? What are we softening? What are we removing altogether? And this adventure path and the player's guide really try to communicate, here's how we are looking at orcs. There's a whole bunch of them that is very orc-like, but there's some stuff that you might have seen in past media that you're not going to find here, like the word savage and stuff like that. What we have done is we've really kept a lot of the physicality of orcs, a lot of the survival sense of it. Yeah, there's some art. And so like the outline that I'd written for this adventure path talked about how, you might have two orcs debating a philosophical point. And when they come to an impasse, they headbutt each other for a while, and whoever passes out first clearly didn't have as strong of a position. And everybody kind of nods and is like, that is entirely reasonable. And it doesn't really undermine the intellectualism of anything that they've talked about, but it's kind of a, hey, we recognize that endurance and physicality is in fact a part of our decision-making process. So get used to it. And you're going to find that as PCs, you're going to be either invited or sometimes roped into a certain amount of that physicality, endurance, tests of strength, and even cunning, to try and not just, get a sense of what is Belkson like so I can tell my patrons, but also, are these orcs who are also invited going to look at us and say, oh, wow, the person representing, I don't know, the Aspis Consortium is tough, so clearly the Aspis Consortium is tough. Or are they going to look at you and say, wow, if you're who they sent, then all the Aspis Consortium is a pile of weenies. That sort of thing.
I have some other art here that you asked me to pull of various, what I assume are some of these like tests of strength and cunning. This like wrangling of this creature is like, if I am on the team of weenies, where if you sent me into this, me the human, I wouldn't make it. But also I just love that Werp is on top of it, seeming like he's riding this thing.
Yeah, there are two things to bring up for this particular illustration. One of them is that, so at least among a segment of the community, it's known that I turned Wardens of Wildwood illustrations into a circus of Drugami masochism, where in every illustration, Drugami is experiencing some sort of misfortune. In Triumph of the Tusk, Werp is our recurring companion, and Werp, in almost every illustration that I can think of, is living its best mechanical life and isn't necessarily even part of the same adventure path that all the iconics are doing. So in this case, Droven is doing his best to try and wrangle a woolly rhinoceros, and Werp's just like, yeah, this is fun. And the person who's not taking any of the damage. The other part of this is that, especially in northern Belkson, abutting the realm of the Mammoth Lords, wrangling megafauna and just beasts in general is a big thing. And so when we were kind of going through the planning stage, came to the decision that, okay, we want to make sure that this isn't just like straight up, oh, we enslaved these animals, or, oh, we have captured this thing and domesticated it into something that is larger and fiercer. Well, not if you're going to use the verb domesticate. So there's one of our back matter articles that explores like how husbandry works in Belkson. And a lot of it is you find the biggest, toughest thing, you trap and subdue it, you raise it and breed it and whatnot for a couple of generations, and then you take anything that's been with you for a couple of generations and you release it back out into the wild, because otherwise it's going to become, sedentary and weak and lazy, and we can't be having that. We want to have the toughest stuff. So does that mean that we have a constant cycle of having to go out and wrangle and wrestle livestock? It sure does. And so in this case, Amiri is being a part of that. This is one of the early challenges that you get to have in Volume 1, which is an Aurochs hunt. But I learned from some of my experiences in organized play that, there are people who don't like just the ethics of hunting. And it's like, they're happy to go out and get ambushed by a cave worm and punch its lights out and eat its spleen. But actively hunting said cave worm, no, thank you. We have standards here, thank you. So there is a sidebar that talks about how if you want to not hunt the Aurochs, then the orcs challenge you to a Aurochs vaulting contest, which is similar to the Minoan bull vaulting that you'll occasionally see in artwork.
Oh, that is so cool. And also, it's spooky month, and one of the like vampires and things have a lot of roots in Romani heritage, and one of the things that we have are they're called Taliga Mulo, and it means vampire horse. And you turn a horse into a vampire horse by jumping over it after sunset. And so now I'm thinking of the horrors of if that was what would happen if you turned it into a vampire Auroch.
Huh. That's one of the opposite things for horses I think of, because I think about how one of the ways of telling whether somebody is a vampire is to put a young boy on top of I think it's a gelding, and ride it over the grave of someone. If the horse spooks and refuses to go over it, then that is a vampire.
That is also very cool. And now everyone wants exclusively vampire horses.
Sorry that we gave you an orc AP. We're gonna have to pivot to vampires.
Vampire horses. Don't worry, vampires are coming. That's next year. I'm very excited. Well, you've all been summoned for the torrent moot, but it's an adventure path, and I doubt that you're gonna let the torrent moot just happen. So how do things sort of progress from there?
So without getting too spoilery, with the War of Immortals, we've had a lot of turnover in the Orc Pantheon. And exactly what the role, like capital R role of gods is in our setting can vary a little bit by the people in the place. And so it's like, hey, if I kill Sarenrae, does the sun go out? If I kill Pharasma, does birth stop happening? Generally that doesn't seem to be the case, but there can be little glitches. See Eridan. And so if we've lost half of our pantheon, what's the nature of the areas of interest that those gods oversaw? Are certain things starting to go a little bit haywire because we don't have the same divine protections or oversight that we did before? And the answer is, to a limited extent, yes. And that's going to drive a bit of the storyline. There's going to be a large conflict that is erupting from within Belkzen that is, again, going to put you on the back foot and on the run for a while when Ardax's happy picnic of peace goes horribly sideways. But you're going to be playing a really big part in helping to root out a lot of treacherous people within Belkzen and help to unite Belkzen against this big threat that is happening. Another one of the guiding principles in designing Triumph the Tusk, though, wasn't just, hey, how do we reframe orcs, but also how can we make sure that this is a storyline that is a Belkzen storyline and not a strictly the PC's storyline. There's kind of the risk of an outside savior sort of thing, where it's like, thank goodness there were these 4 foreigners who had university educations who came in and were able to save Belkzen from itself. We didn't want that to be the outcome. So as PCs, you are working alongside of Belkzen. You're doing some important stuff, but Belkzen and Ardax and company are still guiding their own fates, and you are a key part of that. But by the time that you capital W win, by the end, it's going to be their story. You are a part of it. Your experiences are your story. Belkzen was a beneficiary of it. So in book 2, you're going to be going to a couple of different places throughout Belkzen, many of them that have been previously established in canon. We mined a lot of stuff from the campaign setting book, Belkzen, Hold of the Orc Hordes, I believe. Here's one. Blisterwell is one of the sites you'll go to. This is a series of 7 mining shafts that were dug out by dwarves 9,000 years ago, when orcs overthrew the Sky Citadel of Koldakar and took over this region. They basically settled in the mining pits, whose lakes are of dubious water quality, and they continue to do a fair amount of manufacturing in here. But it has been under the contested control of 2 different orc holds for a while. And when all this chaos is happening, both those orc holds look at each other and say, now's our chance to finally get even. And your job will be to go in there and say, people, whoa, and stop the fighting. But there's a lot more to it that you'll have to find out.
I don't want you to spoil sort of too much as we get into sort of the 3rd volume, which is, one of those spoiler heavy parts of an AP. But I do have its cover art here.
Oh boy.
And
yeah.
There's a lot happening here that I would love to hear about.
Absolutely. So in the first chapter, you're going to be sneaking into one of the enemy settlements and basically their HQ. But the land route is going to be guarded and full of terrors. So you are going to go through the not land route, which is also less guarded but full of terrors. And so one of the that Belton campaign setting book had a whole bunch of orc holds. And there are a number of them that are like, these are the angry orcs. They live in the mountains. You're like, okay, great. You and 3 others. But there are a couple of them that really stand out that I looked at and was like, oh, I want to incorporate these guys. And the Drowning Sand hold is one of those. They live on the Dirt Sea, which is this basically lake of quicksand that they have built some pontoon-style boats and other silt craft that they're able to kind of skim over the surface of it. And when the floods come during the flood truce, they're able to kind of take those boats out into wider areas, into the temporary swamps. But yeah, so they know how to cross these things. But if you're going to cross this silt sea, this dirt sea that is, and sneak into location X, you're going to have to deal with some of the things that are out there. And this sandy Leviathan serpent thing is one of the things that you might have to deal with. When we were exploring some of the cultural aspects during development, Michelle and I kind of talked about like, okay, what can we do in the aftermath toward the end of this chapter? And it was like, we haven't had a food scene in a while. What do you think this thing tastes like? And that is a discussion that led us down the road to come up with the term mud bacon, which may or may not be a barbecue scene that you get to have toward the end of the first chapter.
Oh, that's so exciting. And I'm also so glad because I do have in my notes, make sure I ask John about mud bacon. So you brought it up without me asking.
There you go.
Frankly, I pulled a lot of art, but I don't want to give too much away. But we are going to slide back to volume 1 because this is my favorite piece of art. And I think it really shows a different side to orc culture that we're trying to embrace and sort of like try to break those stereotypes. So this is so sweet. And I won't ask for the spoilers of like what's happening here storyline wise. But I just really wanted to appreciate this.
I mean, fortunately, it's not a spoiler. This is the opening of one of our back matter articles. I believe this one is the opener to the Flood Truce. So the back matter for the first volume is one about just orc culture in general, and then another one is about the Flood Truce. So during that roughly 3-month time, what goes on. And so one of the things about the Flood Truce is that it's a time of relative peace. And so orcs tend to travel very widely, not only to hunt, but also to like visit other communities and possibly find spouses. And so it is certainly a time of union, marriage, etc. And so Amiri is clearly officiating a grand old time. And, I don't think that we dive too deep into like orc marital practices, but one of the things that we did in revisiting orcs, and this is kind of to riff on like the old alignment paradigm, is to really explore them less as evil, but really play into the chaos of them. So there's a fair amount of like bullheadedness, willfulness, desire to constantly change things up. And so even this scene is one of many different possibilities of what might be the case. Some of the communities might, not do marriage at all, whatever. It's like they're going to change things from generation to generation. And that is in fact a a feature, not a bug.
Thank you. Well, we are wrapping up on time, and also, again, I don't want you to spoil too many things from these adventures, but do you have a spoiler for me?
Yeah, I don't know if you ended up pulling a piece of art from 209, the opener to the Adventure Toolbox.
Yes,
with
I do
Droven
have that.
writing a particular thing. There we go. Oh boy. So for those who have looked at Howl of the Wild, you may have seen that there are advanced companion creature options in there, which are really a great way of expanding what is possible to do with what you might think of like an animal companion. So, if you want to have a griffin or a hippocampus or whatever, fine, go to Howl of the Wild, but they don't have a wyvern in there. And one of the recurring creatures in Belkzen are the drakes, and particularly the wyverns. There's an entire hold that is famed for riding around on wyverns. And in the course of Volume 3, you're going to be able to gain access to wyverns, and there's a wyvern creature companion or advanced creature companion in the back matter. So if that's the route you go, you got options ready to work it on.
Thank you. And we will
Once
see.
again, Warp is having a time of his life while Droven's trying to do all business fighting some hellhounds.
Yeah. You know what? I want the, like, not an adventure path, but like one of the shorter, like our free RPG day style adventures that we do sometimes. That's just whatever Warp is doing while everyone else is trying to prevent war and like help Belkzen. I want to know what Warp is doing.
Like there's been a bit of joking, like half series joking around of like, what if we had an adventure that was only like the companion creatures? And but I think what we could even do is just say, scrap that idea. Next free RPG day module is just going to be called Damn It Warp, where Warp is the antagonist but not the villain, and it's all about undoing whatever Warp has been doing with the minion trait and 2 actions that he's afforded.
You can do a lot with 2 actions. I have learned
countless hours of behind the scenes backstory time, especially if Droven is the one who's giving the mission out and just like, okay, it sure is a day that ends in Y, and therefore I've lost track of Warp, and also half of the city's on fire, which probably means that it's because of Warp. I'm getting too old for this. Track down Warp.
Fix it for me, please.
Some sort of can be repaired later state.
Well, we will see you again very shortly after our next little commercial break when we all come back for a Q&A. So thank you for talking Triumph of the Tusk with me today.
Yeehaw. Sounds good.
In the nation of Shenmin, spirits and monsters stalk the depths of Spectre Wood, and ghost towns outnumber those inhabited by living souls. But this was not always the case. Over 100 years ago, the Age of Lost Omens began in Tian Sha with the collapse of the mighty Lunghua Empire, an event that left the small towns of Shenmin isolated and forced their citizens to become self-sufficient or fall to ruin. Willow Shore was one such town. Founded to support the construction of a remote mountain monastery, Willow Shore soon transitioned over to a lumber town, and like so many others, it was forced to fend for itself in the years after the Empire's fall. Not 2 years later, the records speak of a mysterious curse that fell upon the town, and while details of what took place have been lost to time, the events of Willow Shore's Season of Ghosts will now be told. The Season of Ghosts begins during the first days of summer, and is a time when the unquiet spirits of Spectrewood grew particularly restless. The townsfolk of Willow Shore celebrate this with a night of feasting on the last day of spring, but when a group of heroes wakes the day after, they find their hometown under siege. Fog shrouds the town, and the night sky shimmers under the light of a crimson moon, and monsters now stalk freely through the town's streets. While defending the monstrous invaders and lighting the town's protective eternal lantern could restore Willow Shore to safety, these invaders and strange manifestations are only the beginning, as walls of ghostly shapes rise in the surrounding woods. The town of Willow Shore has become cursed, and its people must band together if they are to survive the coming year and the horrific monsters they will face. Can the town's newest heroes save their homes, family, and themselves? Or will the Season of Ghosts mean the end for them all?
Survival in a world beset by magic and evil takes more than a lucky roll of the dice. Complete your Pathfinder Core Rulebook collection with Player Core 2, an expansion on character options for the remastered Pathfinder 2nd Edition rule set. Tinker and test out formulas as an alchemist, make keen observations, and get to the heart of the matter as an investigator. Stand strong and ferocious as a barbarian. Take up a holy, or unholy, mantle in service of a deity as a champion. Dance through battle with the grace and bravado of a swashbuckler. Maintain a balance between mind, body, and spirit as a monk. Take hold of the innate magic in your sorceress bloodline. Explore the mysteries of your fate as an oracle. And build even more customized characters with archetypes, ancestries, versatile heritages, and more.
Hello, everyone.
We're back. There was a dragon.
There was a dragon. It's actually a wyvern, I believe. But yes. Welcome back for the Q&A portion of our show. As I believe Alex said earlier, we've been gathering your questions for Mark and Liane. And Mark may or may not pop into the chat. And if not, he and Liane might have plans to answer some of those later in a different video or blog post. So we have been gathering those, but we won't be touching on any of those today, except I will answer for the person who might have missed it in the segment. There will be an audiobook. It's coming out a couple weeks after the physical book because it's still currently in editing and post-production. The audio, not the text, obviously. But yeah, so there will be an audiobook. Expect that about mid-November. But having gone through with that, now Alex and I will take turns asking our wonderful guests who are here with us in person some questions.
Am I supposed to start? Is that my cue?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see. John just talked a whole lot, so I want to give him a break from answering questions and ask Luis a question that you can take in whatever direction you want, I guess. Luis, how does it feel to create a god?
Fun. It's a good time, generally. Unless you are maybe referring in the setting, and then it's a very difficult process, I feel. I think if we were to ask the Starstone, I bet the Starstone is kind of fed up with making gods at this point, and is probably getting angry at this point, and is like, enough of this. I'm gonna make my own gods. I'm tired of people coming to me and being like, make me a god. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. But when it comes to outlining and designing and writing and all that stuff, it's usually a fun time, but it does run into an interesting dynamic of like, want to do new stuff and still be usable, but not be so niche because, if I'm the god of cinnamon rolls, what help am I in adventuring? But sometimes a lot of concepts are already covered, but we do find new ways to handle stuff. Like I mentioned, darkness didn't have too many benevolent deities going on with that. So that was a way we can carve out a new niche in something that was generally already kind of occupied.
Counterpoint to your god of cinnamon rolls, we do have a new wandering chef archetype. So there is room. I'm just saying.
As well as the Starfinder deity from Hood here. What was it? Galactic Magic.
Of cinnamon rolls specifically?
Please elaborate. Of cooking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
I thought you meant of cinnamon rolls, and I was gonna get really excited.
Now I just want cinnamon rolls.
It's the perfect weather now.
It is the perfect weather for a
the
cinnamon
deity
roll.
of cinnamon rolls exists only to be killed on screen in order to make all the players cry.
No, you monster!
Yeah, been called worse as a developer.
New plot for Damn It Warp. This is a question for everybody. And it is, if you could be a cleric for any god, who would it be?
The god of cinnamon rolls.
Understood. Alex is sold.
I'm sold. No, I'm going with Eloratu, the Starfinder deity of secrets and knowledge. I think they're fun.
I'm going to go. Oh, boy, this is rough. And I literally have the whole list pulled up right here. This is a god I like, so I'm gonna go with this. Is it gonna be my pick tomorrow or a week from now? Who knows? But I'm gonna go with Yrmidar, who's one of the new giant gods, who is god of camaraderie in the hunt and shipbuilders. It's the god of hanging out with your buddies, having a good time with your buddies, kissing the bros goodnight.
Kissing the homies goodnight.
I'm so glad that we have a god of kissing the homies goodnight. Thank you, Luis.
Yes. Also, were creatures, but were creatures can be homies too.
You've just said the same thing twice. Mine, I'm gonna be boring and basic and say Pharasma, because I love that her domains encompass birth, death, and the nebulous entity that is what remains of fate. And as someone who plays, although I will say I play almost exclusively oracles, so if I'd have to learn a whole new set of rules to be a cleric of Pharasma instead of an oracle of
Rue, would this decision also be partly influenced because you wrote Pharasma's entry in Divine Mysteries?
Maybe, but actually it's the other way around. I was so excited about the chance to put her on my list of things that I wanted to write because she is my favorite.
And she gave us Yavali, in a sense.
Yes!
John Compton, who's your god?
Tsukio, deity of moon jade spirits, but also to an extent neurodivergence, mentorship, and accepting other people for how they are and trying to make them better nonetheless, but keeping your distance on it.
Another god that John had a strong hand in helping shape Tsukio as well. So,
all right, so we've all determined our characters. We'll meet here next week for the first session, right? Great.
Yes.
Okay.
Nim and roll escapade.
Yes. Let's see. Question for John Compton. What in Triumph of the Tusk, what factions or nations might the PCs be able to represent? Is that something we might learn about in the player's guide soon, perhaps?
Yep, that is absolutely something that will be in the player's guide. So there, rather than just giving you a full list of here are all the organizations that might work, instead what we did is we broke it into kind of some general categories of patrons, and we gave a couple of examples for each to help to inspire people in case they want to, use those to say, knowing that I will pull in this other one from canon or whatever. So they're like academic, commerce, military sorts of patrons that you might consider. So I mentioned the Aspis Consortium earlier on, that's referenced in there. The Esoteric Order, the Palatine Eye, we have some information about why they might be interested in Belkzen. A lot of the military things a lot of the nations around Lake and Carthan are kind of all looking at each other, passing notes, and kind of plotting out, should we make deals with each other so we can punch Tarbafon in the face? And Belkzen is totally an anti-Tarbafon region and could totally work well in that. So they might have an interest in sending people to kind of get a feel for Belkzen and see if they could in fact be allies long-term rather than just allies of emergency convenience. So you'll find a lot of suggestions in there about what organizations could work. And then from there, you can take what you see, or you can use those to inspire your own.
Very cool.
My turn. All right. Easy Does It asks for Luis. With Olok being used as the Battle Harbinger cleric art, how is it explained as to how he can be a cleric after Gorham bit the dust?
Those not in the know, Olok was one of our iconics during first edition. He was the iconic war priest, of which there is not a separate class anymore. That's just a variant cleric, depending on what options you take. But he felt perfect for the Battle Harbinger, which is very war priest-like. But I thought of that too. Hey, he was a war priest of Gorham. What's going on? How is he getting power? And if you check out the artwork in the book, you'll see that he had normally the symbol of Gorham on his helmet. That is now scratched out. He had it up on his banner. That has been broken off. How that happened, I don't know. That's an interesting story. I'd love to explore that someday. Did he scratch it out, in rage after Gorham's death, or what's going on with that? But he has a different weapon now, which he has his like great sword, and he also has like this bladed gauntlet, which is the favored weapon of a different deity. And if you look real closely, hanging among the various things around his neck is a new holy symbol, which is one of the holy symbols that was voted upon earlier in the stream, but didn't get the vote. It was one of the battle gods. That's Genzairi. And so what's happened is he is no longer a cleric of Gorham, but he is now a cleric of this new god, Genzairi, who is got a lot about self-reflection among the battlefield. You learn stuff out in the battlefield. You learn about yourself in combat. And wouldn't you know it, Olak has a lot to learn about who he is and who he's going to be as a person going forward now that his previous god has died.
And because Gorham played a really big role in Belkzen as well, then Gorham's destruction has been a significant blow to many Belkzen as well. But because of how that region's orcs tend to behave, you're still going to find a fair number of ex-Gorhamites who are clinging on and keeping the magic alive, whether or not their sword glows at the same time. But yeah, there's certainly a degree of like, hey, can an ex-cleric still cast a tiny, dwindling little bit of magic that is lesser and lesser every day now that Gorham is dead? Could be. And how do various ex-priests feel about things now that their patron is gone? It's ripe for storytelling.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. John, I'm going to ask you a question that didn't come to us quite as a question, and I'm sure could be like a 30-minute discussion. So keep in mind that we only have a few minutes left on the stream when you answer this. But one of our viewers was interested in if the orcs have a strange relationship with holy gods, since they both have something against undead.
Gotcha. So I mentioned earlier in the stream that like we approach orcs from more of a chaos rather than evil perspective. And so there's a bit of like, do they like holy things that is less of an issue now, how we're approaching them. But one thing I can say is like, hey, like holy deities don't really like undead. Orcs have a recent conflict called the Battle of Nine Skulls, I think, or Nine Shattered Skulls, something like that, which was a couple of years ago. Tarbathon tried to show up to them and say, all right, remember a couple thousand years ago when I enslaved all of you, you fought and died for me and got nothing in return? Let's do that again. All right, hop to. And the orc said, absolutely not. And
under no circumstances have a terrible day.
Punch all his messengers, resulting in 9 or more broken skulls. Yeah, I think you're going to find that there's plenty of overlap, or at least shared interests that can happen. Even if, just in general, Belkzen trends a little bit more toward unholy deities and faiths than many other regions, but it is by no means a monolith.
I think we have time for probably about one more question. I'm going to be mean and ask if Luis has any that he particularly wants to answer.
Do I want to particularly? There's been people asking about Nocticula, about Apuk, Apocalypse Rider, the
I think we
Radiant
need
Prism.
the T on the Radiant Prism.
The Radiant Prism asking out Aleph. I don't know if it's. I bet the answer is yes, but I wouldn't know the story. I feel like James Jacobs would know better than me. I don't know. Oh wait, there's a general section. Of course, I could answer a general question, not just... Will Saylock survive the Godsrain? Yes, of course. Cassandali and Bry still separate gods? Yes, of course. Anything new with Demir? He got remastered.
Luis is just rapid fire.
I don't know. I feel like John might be able to answer a question. Oh, no, here. Hey, where are my psychopomps at? Well, of course, there's Yavali here, who people keep asking me, hey, release this background so I can use it. So maybe I will. And psychopomp deities do show up in Divine Mysteries. There's a whole section on monitored demigods, which includes psychopomp ushers. So yeah, look forward to that. When you pre-order and buy Divine Mysteries right now, please go do that.
1 second, I can put the link in right now. Yay. But yes, thank you both so much for joining us, and I almost said posthumous, but that's not right. Post recording, thank you to Liane and Mark, who came on earlier this week and recorded with me.
Both of whom are still very much alive.
Yes.
I hope.
But thank you for joining us. Would you like to tell folks where they can find you, stuff like that?
I will go first. Hey, look, there's a thing here. If you are somehow still on Twitter, that's where I am. And I forget the naming convention for Blue Sky, but it's also Donato Classic. Find me there. And otherwise, I'm around. I'm seeing what you guys post and keeping tabs on stuff and occasionally chiming in. So never think you're fully safe from my creative direction.
And John.
I check out the Paizo.com message boards every once in a while. Otherwise, I tend to haunt the Pathfinder RPG Discord server, particularly the Galarian lore section. So always happy to field some questions, or more often direct somebody to an existing resource.
And I have been Rue. You can find me most places on the internet as Ilana Knight, or on the site formerly known as Twitter as Ilana Knight 13. And you can also find me on Paizo's forums, where I like to comment excitedly on all the blogs that we write.
And I'm Alex Spidel, Paizo's organized play coordinator. You can find me by searching my name, Alex Spidel. And if I'm not there, then I don't have an account on that site. And you can find me haunting the Discord servers, where I will sometimes appear when you least expect it. And other times I will appear exactly when you expect it, because you tagged me. It's an effective system. What can I say?
That's fair.
Yep. What are you talking about at the end here, Rue?
Yeah, I was about to. You can catch us for our next Paizo Live on Friday, November 8th. We are skipping to the second Friday of the month, because the first Friday of the month, I'm on vacation for my honeymoon.
Oh, well, that's reasonable. And also it's the day after.
Anniversary.
It's also the day after Halloween, and so like all of the Paizo staff will be very tired. So
yeah, because we will have all been partying or playing games on Halloween, depending on what your plans are. So our next one will be on November 8th. And we also have a couple of sort of end of stream announcements. Alex grabbed one during his segment with Luis, which is that the Humble Bundle is currently going for, I think the maximum tier is $50. You get a physical copy of Book of the Dead, along with over $800 of PDFs and all of the Foundry modules for the Bloodlords adventure path. So you get a lot of value, and some of your money goes to Take This, which is an organization dedicated to mental health in gaming. And also our closing segment, which is more of a video for this, as we close you all out, will be a trailer for Dragon's Demand, which is a CRPG made by one of our partners at Ossian Studios that is crowdfunding on Kickstarter right now.
Hooray!
And with that, I would like to bid you all good night and say that we'll see you next month. Same goblin time, same Skittermander channel.
Goodbye, everyone.